Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom or Tom. How's it going?
Tony, we are talking transfer portal yet again. The business seems to be picking up in the portal in kind of both directions for Ohio State and a whole lot of other teams right now. I saw there was a report that there were something like 3,000 players already in the portal on the first 36 or so hours that it had been open, and you keep seeing new guys going in. So this might get worse before it gets better.
You say worse. I say this might get better before it gets worse. You say 3,000. I want 4,000. Can we do 5,000? More names, please. Can always use more names. One name that we're talking about today is Old Dominion wide receiver Tre Brown, who is began his career in junior college, right? He's one of those guys that has no high school profile on like 24/7 or on three. That's how low rated he was. Went to junior college, then did well there. Caught on at Old Dominion, did well there. Now he is currently visiting Texas and then scheduled to visit Ohio State over the next couple of days and maybe somebody else after that. But figure if you're visiting Texas, you're visiting Ohio State. I don't know what else you need to see. But this is a guy who this past season, 38 catches, 762 yards, and has basically 6'2", 180. He's always been like a 20-yard catch per guy, which Ohio State has not had in a while as somebody outside as that Z receiver that can stretch the field and help out the rest of the receivers by just unclogging some of that area. Had a 98-yard catch this season, and has scored some touchdowns, as I mentioned. But overall, I believe he is a redshirt sophomore, so he would have 2 years of eligibility remaining. But Tom, your thoughts on the possibility of Tre Brown and being a guy that could play next to Jeremiah Smith?
Yeah, he's got some real interesting stats on his sheet. I'm going looking through the long catch of the game for him. And Tony, how many games do you think he had a 40-yard catch or longer in
Hmm.
this season?
Well, I know
Out of
he had
13.
one catch against Marshall for 71 yards, so I know that's one. And I'll say six. I don't know.
Seven times he had a 45-yarder against North Carolina Central, a 41-yarder against Liberty, a 49-yarder against Coastal Carolina, the 71-yarder you mentioned against Marshall, a 98-yarder against James Madison. That would be a Ohio State single play record for the longest play in the history of Ohio State football, and he did that against a team that made the playoffs. 40-yarder against ULM and a 51-yarder against Troy. So safe to say a fairly big play receiver. The two games he played against, high level, power conference kind of competition, three catches for 27 yards against Indiana, three catches for 35 yards and a touchdown against Virginia Tech. So, reasonable numbers. You're going to be, if you are one of the primary targets, you're getting matched up with the opposing team's best corner, which is probably not, if you end up on the Ohio State team and Jeremiah Smith is still there, probably not the guy you're going to be matched up against. But certainly some intriguing numbers there. His numbers tailed off a little bit towards the end of the season, but they lost. Old Dominion lost their quarterback to the portal. He actually just committed to play at Wisconsin this coming year, and in the bowl game, the backup quarterback went out with looked like, I guess, concussion symptoms. So, there's a little bit of a reason why you probably saw those numbers tail off a little bit towards the end of the year. But, there's certainly some intriguing big play ability there for Tre Brown.
Yeah, you just wonder how much of a step up, and well, we know how much of a step up, but how much can he handle that step up to go from high school, junior college, then to Old Dominion, and then to the Big Ten. And as you mentioned, the two games against Power Four, six catches for 62 yards and a touchdown. Now he'll have more help around him, as you know, but it is it is a big ask. It is a big step. But, against one of the best teams you played, James Madison, 4 catches for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, that included the 98-yarder, doing a lot of that work. In there, I think one of the other, you mentioned the kind of the downturn of his stats, where he's got, had 2 100-yard receiving games in, one in October, one in November. Then in the last 3 games, he just had 4 catches total for 27 yards. And that's certainly something to look at. But Texas is interested. Ohio State is interested. A bunch of other people are interested. And I don't think it's because they're desperate. I think they see somebody that can stretch the field. And for Ohio State, like I said, that's somebody they really haven't had in a while that can do that. And in terms of like Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith can both do that. I'm saying somebody that can, the Jameson Williams of that, or the Chris Olave type of Z receiver, that's what they're known for. And like I said, this guy's always just been a 20-yard catch guy, whether it was high school, whether it was junior college, whether it was Old Dominion. And I think that's what Ohio State is looking for at this point, somebody that can help out Jeremiah Smith and just keep him clean and keep safeties off of him as much as possible. Now, Tre Brown's a guy that is like that. I don't know that he is that guy. That's the thing where the step up is big, and he won't be the only guy that they look at. But there's some, I don't know, some like Devin Smith. Is this Devin Smith or is this Jaden Ballard?
Yeah, and that's kind of the difficult question, because you get one of those guys, and those were 2 guys who came from the same high school, wore the same jersey number, and one of them was basically Mr. Touchdown, and one of them never really did anything of consequence at Ohio State, and they went to Wisconsin and never really did anything of consequence at Wisconsin. So it's kind of hard to project. I was just pulling up Elijah Surratt because he played at James Madison his sophomore year at James Madison, where I think he had the same kind of thing, where he started somewhere else and then ended up playing as a sophomore at James Madison. He, as a sophomore, same conference, obviously, which is why I'm pulling this comp, 82 catches, 1,191 yards, 8 touchdowns. Now, he's a little bit more of an X receiver than a Z receiver. Charlie Becker for Indiana is kind of more their Z receiver. But, less yards per catch, more receptions, more touchdowns. But, you see what Elijah Surratt has turned into at the Big Ten level. Really, he actually had higher yards per reception in his first year at Indiana than he did at James Madison. So this is not you're getting pulled up from Division III. Like there are examples of guys going from that conference to the Big Ten and having success. So, this is a something that a whole lot of coaches are getting paid a whole lot of money to figure out. Okay, what is this guy's transition going to look like, and can he make that leap? I am not going to project anything one way or the other, because that is above my pay grade. But it is certainly a jump in terms of competition level that has been done before with some success.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So there you go, Ohio State looking at an outside receiver here, and in Tre Brown, they're talking with a couple of slot receivers and like DeAndre Moore from Texas, who I think could play outside as that Z maybe if needed, or could certainly be a more explosive option on the slot for the Buckeyes. So there you go. Another name for you guys to keep an eye out. We'll have more on Tre Brown, I think, as the week goes on, as more happens with the visit there. So if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that thumbs up. If you're listening, we always appreciate the feedback, the positive feedback. Doesn't matter. All feedback is good feedback for some algorithms. Probably 5-star rating review is appreciated. And you can continue to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com talking about all of these possibilities. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you all later.